Yes, I want to thank Robert Carlson, the North Beach Public Librarian, for having me there to read with Jerry Ferez. We are now videoing much of what I read that night. I might mention that Robert is a writer as well as gets me to events like Live Worms, and I want to thank him. I want to thank the North Beach community. Mention Rosemary Mano, Jerry Ferez, who's reading with me, and Ronald Sauer and Rebecca Peters, and thank you, folks. And in introducing my poetry, I want to mention my dad, who was a school principal, but he was also a Marine lieutenant, and he liked to think of himself as a tough son of a bitch. He truly was. His parents had a 3rd and 6th grade education. I want to mention with my dad, he got me to play, I played high school football, and I also published poetry about 45 years ago in high school. Okay, as far as my mom, I want to mention that she was still tap dancing as of 81 years old, 2 years ago. 4 of her 6 kids have disabilities. Now another subject, venues, old venues. One is Babar, which in the early 90s, QR Hand, Joey Cook, Jerry Ferez, Rosemary Mano, Vampire Mike were there. Also the Above Paradise in the early 80s with Jenny Joseph. There was Julia Vinograd, David Gollop. So now I'm going to read a couple of poems. I'm going to mention Carlton Wall in this poem. He's my step-grandfather, was my step-grandfather. There is absolutely no trickle-down effect. From a Bohemian Sutter Street Dream. Sitting here at Polk in Sacramento at the Royal Ground Cafe, thinking about Sutter Street, its shops, its sparkle, its delight. Yet every vice and crime created exists here. Some are unhappy folks, merchants making money, some not. Bustling with activity, these coffee shops, bars, art galleries, the Marines Memorial, the Academy of Art College, now University, the buildings, garages, hotels, like the Drake, Holiday Inn, Canterbury, and on some, the beat like smooth jazz bounces softly on. Shop, shop, till you drop, they say. From a Bohemian Sutter Street dream, there are hip art students carrying canvases, coffee shop owners, bartenders, clerks, like on Post Street, the Postrio, the Press Club, and in the same neighborhood, the St. Francis Hotel and Union Square and garage that my step-grandfather Carlton Wall had financed, built, and had given to the city in 1942. Powell Street, yay. Dreaming of this neighborhood, its spectacle, magic, and human form, and surely with its blood, bone, sinews, and fleshy brush strokes on painted texture from a Bohemian Sutter Street dream. Its life, color, and heartbeat is truly felt. The second poem is a long poem. It's about 5 or 6 minutes. It's dedicated to Allison. We were an item in the 90s, and we lived together for about 3 years. I want to mention now the Granada, because Granada's in here. The Granada, I've been here 25 years, minus 3. We've had a person here named Stanley, I don't recall his last name, who gave supposedly Ken Kesey his first acid at the VA hospital down in Menlo Park. And also more about the Granada. 1 dies a week on average. We have some very severely mentally ill people here. I've made over 2,000 911 calls in these years. Vincent Joyce lived here. He's supposedly the nephew of James Joyce. Party glances. Clark had just homered. The Giants were now ahead, 2-1 in the bottom of the 4th. I looked from the TV screen to her face. Those eyes, brown eyes, struck me with their depth, their secrets untold, her dark beauty, She looked a little bit like a younger Linda Ronstadt. She, so you lived just up the street? Yes, I retorted, not with much enthusiasm. How long have you been at the Bohemian Palace? She, about 6 months. I can't stand it at times. The gossip, the nuance, and innuendo. Everyone is into everyone's business. And my roommate, I don't know how she supports herself, and the clothes she wears, they're so trashy. We were young, lighthearted, and hungry for love. Allie was dressed in all black with false pearl necklace. Smiling, she took a sip from a margarita and nodded toward me and smiled. I told you it is a balancing act between being part poet, author, and businessman. I work part-time marketing, PC, accounting software. I'm part-time at the desk at the hotel with the seniors up the street. Then I find time to write poetry. I wish I could settle down to write prose, a novel, a book of fiction. But she, have you traveled much? Not really. I'm the only one in my family who hasn't really traveled to Europe, Paris, or London, let alone to other parts of the globe. Although I feel I have vicariously traveled living in the city. You meet all different cultures from Latin America, Europe, Eastern Europe, Africa, China. It's like when you go to the mission, you're in Latin America or in Chinatown, China. Where are you from? He asked her. Allie, I was born in London, lived and raised in Hawaii. I've traveled over most of the world. I relish traveling. Why now San Francisco? Oh, my sister, her husband, and child live near. I can babysit and be close to part of my family. We were young, lighthearted, and hungry for love. Flashback to the party where we met, where Tom, the older party animal, and his consortium of friends and business acquaintances were there at the barbecue on the 4th of July. Folks were drinking their beer, going off to their private rooms in little groups, and smoking that holy reefer. The manager of the hotel had some awesome green bud and was in quite good spirits, talking about baseball, politics, and that the beer was being drunken up much too quickly. Bob, his assistant, a slender Afro-American, tall, wiry guy, kept nodding and saying, "Yay," in profound earnest. We were young, lighthearted, and hungry for love. Back upstairs on the deck, Jens waved, "Howdy," and with his long mustache, stocky appearance, we said he was still living over at Tim's place. Months before, he was managing a Tenderloin hotel building, but the owners wanted to make big changes, and Jens was out. Don and Don Female were at the corner. Don was explaining how the engineers were still taking their time getting the prototype mouthpiece. He said he needed investor money, maybe $30,000 right now. Charlie Lennon, do you want it well done or medium? Allie, medium rare, more on the rare side, could you? She, in a light, shrill voice. Charlie had done the painting around the metal corrugated fence. Scenes of black women singing and a nymph swimming in bright azure water, all this surrounding the rooftop. The sky was bright with hot sun drenching the 30 or 40 guests and tenants of the hotel. Now Dave and Laura headed over on Larkin past the John Barleycorn. I always thought of the Barleycorn as a prototype protagonist alcoholic in Jack London's novel, even though I had not read that particular book of his. One of my favorites was Seawolf, especially the philosophical discussion between Captain Wolf Larsen and the protagonist about should we live in the present or should we live for eternity. I loved the dialogue that kept having meaning for me, even after a third read. We were young, lighthearted, and hungry for love. Flash forward to back at Tappy's bar and restaurant. Susan and bartender, can I get you another one? No, she said, looking at me with those big, striking, beautiful brown eyes. In a lower tone, are we going? Nodding, I paid the tab while watching the TV screens going. MTV was on and 3 screens with a Giants-Phillies game. the Giants were still in the lead. Interestingly enough, there was a bit of San Francisco history in the bar. The bricks were said to be from before the October 1906 earthquake. Wise bricks, I thought. We smiled both and said goodbye to Mike and Susan. It was bright outside. We squinted and walked up Larkin, seeing the distant outline of fog roll in. She told me further how she liked to act. She would like to do commercials or TV soap acting. I commented with a cliche by saying, "You don't have to be a star to be in my band." This is also what I had said to her at the 4th of July party at the Bohemian Palace. We were young, lighthearted, and hungry for love. We reached the Pacific Street and were going to head for Chinatown and North Beach, but we decided to dine on Chinese food on Polk Street. Thank you, folks.